T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight is the 2-year anniversary of Kush's Corner. Alex Myers is joining me once again, keeping the tradition going. He was here for episode 1 for the 1-year anniversary, and now the 2-year anniversary. So a lot of cool topics to get into tonight with Alex. But before we do that, as always, of course, USARK. So USARK is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle. Check out usark.org for everything you need to know about the organization. That website is also where you can find alerts to new pieces of legislation introduced either at the national level or at local levels, as well as updates on any pieces of legislation. USARK.org is also where you can become a member of the organization. As a community, we have strength in numbers, and the more people that are behind the cause, the better. And here we are, man. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of the support over the last 2 years. It's kind of crazy to think that it's been 2 years already of doing the show almost every single week. If I had been doing it every week, this would be episode 105. It's 101, so missing 4 weeks in 2 years, I don't think is too bad. But yeah, I mean, man, I really appreciate everybody's support, man. If you're here on YouTube and you are not already, please subscribe to the channel. A new podcast comes out every single day of the week here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network from some of the best hosts in the game, talking about a wide variety of topics within the industry. So if you are a reptile podcast fan, you have come to the right place. But if you are more of an audio person like myself, and that is your preferred means of consumption, we are on all the major audio platforms, be that Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the Trap Talk Reptile Network. A follow and a 5-star review on any of those platforms would be most appreciated. And for me and for this show, the best way you can possibly support would be going over to patreon.com/CushReptile. That is the best way to support everything that's going on over here. As a perk of being part of the Patreon, 50% of all membership immediately becomes a credit towards a new animal, and that credit never expires, as well as early access to animals. And another thing that I really figure I should be shouting out more on here, if you're not already, please go subscribe to my Kush Reptile YouTube channel. That's where I post vlog style videos every single Friday. So that would be most appreciated if you guys could check that out too. With all that housekeeping out of the way, time to bring Alex onto the show. What's going on, dude? Thank you for being back here once again.
Happy 2-year anniversary. Going strong, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, man. I'm not even sure what to think about it at this point. The thought of being over 100 episodes, I feel like is almost more extreme to me than the 2-year anniversary, because that's what, 200 to 250 hours probably of straight.
Probably pushing 300. I mean, I know we've had some long episodes. The first thing that comes to mind is I remember when we interviewed Casey Schultz. I mean, that was over 3 hours. I think she said that she had to be, she was an hour ahead of us.
Right.
And she said she had to be awake in 4 hours. So,
felt bad by the end of that. I was like, oh,
yeah, that was a great episode though.
It was.
So, I mean, a lot of great episodes, and it is interesting thinking about the time frame of all this. It feels like yesterday. I remember when you called me with the idea of you wanting to start a podcast. I felt bad because I was like, I don't know if I could be a permanent co-host, but I do appreciate that you have me on from time to time to do what I can as a co-host. But I mean, dude, 2 years later, rocking on the coolest reptile network in the world, right? Sharing a wide variety of reptile herpeticultural topics and wider variety of guests. And it just seems like, you know, even with the repeat guests, each episode that is followed up is just better and better. There's more knowledge, more information being shared. And as far as contributing to the digital database that is the Reptile podcast world, you're killing it, dude. And so I'm happy that you're keeping me along for the ride here as we celebrate this 2-year anniversary, right? Should be very proud. It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words. Definitely, it's crazy, man. I've always been a podcast listener, just as a person. Like I'm an auditory learner, so when I found podcasts just as a medium, I was like, oh, this is freaking awesome. And I'm also the kind of person that, like, when I get really into something, I just I want to do it. I want to be a part of it. So to me, it was always kind of a no-brainer. And obviously, like, I was part of the Unfiltered podcast back in the day as well. So this is not like this was the first attempt at this for me, but MJ would always lead those shows. So I was just kind of like sitting back, had my few questions I wanted to ask, kind of waiting for the right opportunity, thinking of some follow-ups or whatever it may be. So it was a much easier process for me, definitely a lot lower stakes. I mean, shoot, the first handful of episodes that I did were like with people like, both Brandons, Ari, Patrick, like I'm just going to talk to people who I know so that these can go well and just, no hiccups. Like I wasn't going to be doing a Craig Schrumbauer in episode 8. So, yeah, no. So it's been a learning process, but, man, it's been a lot of fun. So I have enjoyed it thoroughly. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, we'll see you back here next year for the 3-year anniversary.
3, and hopefully, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years of Kush's Corner. Gonna make it happen.
We did a lot of years.
Yeah,
I'm going for my 3rd term of podcast.
3rd term of podcast.
No one's gonna stop me. So yeah, man, how have things been going since we last caught up on here?
I've been busy. Career change in life and just sort of staying on top of the lizards. I had a really weird ending to my 2025 breeding season, and it started in October because typically up here in Minnesota, as soon as September, even honestly late August, we should be having a drop in temps. And we were getting our nights into the 40s and almost hitting freezing. And then out of nowhere, the first day of October, it shot up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Just a crazy warm spell out of nowhere.
Crazy.
And for whatever reason, I think that threw a bunch of my lizards off, and specifically my water dragons. Then within a span of about 3 weeks, I think, the pressure systems were low. My reptile room kind of reflects the outside temps a little bit because I keep my heat always at 60. I like sleeping in the cold. That's just how I am. And so since the heat doesn't run in my place, the reptile room in the winter, when it gets below freezing at night, that room might get 65 to 70 at night. And then in the summer, it's going to stay warmer. And so that's sort of what I think happened is my nights were getting, 70, maybe 68. And then out of nowhere, we had that 90-degree day. And that whole room went from a daytime high of like 84, and bam, the room was, 91. I let my room cook with those lizards, and they love it.
Yeah.
But because of that, and then, the room retains heat. So for that whole week, it was anywhere in the high 80s during the day and still dropping into the high 70s at night. I had about 4 clutches of water dragons laid, and all 3 of my sailfin females went again. And I'm still seeing the, I guess, if you will, consequences of that odd warm spike. Although, that's not really a consequence, but it's been a lot of babies hatching literally over the past 5 weeks.
Oh no, what a shame. God,
yeah.
Awful. Oh, this terrible warm spell got you handfuls of clutches. Oh gosh, I'm playing the world's smallest violin.
I know. It's I was hoping for a little bit more of a break. It's fun raising baby lizards, but you hatch 1 clutch of 10, and then 5 days later another clutch of 10 hatches, and another. And literally in a span of a week, just in water dragons, I went from about 7 that I had remaining to about 37. And now since that, those have sold. But, you know, it's just, you know, I've got eggs cooking already this year. So it's going to be another, you know, high volume of baby water dragons for me. I don't have the words to describe it. I didn't think I'd have this much luck right away, especially now going on 2 years after my move up here. So I'll take what I can get. But for anybody listening, if you want a water dragon, tell me you came from the podcast, the Trap Talk, and I'll give you a discount because I want to move some of these.
Take advantage of that, people. Yeah, I mean, no, like I feel like every time I'm looking at, you know, your social media, or like you'll send me something, I'm like, is this a new picture of a new clutch, or is this like an old picture? Because I can't even keep track of it. There's just, the eggs are just flying over there.
Yeah. I mean, I was checking my notes literally every month since July last year. I have hatched a clutch of sailfin dragons. Yeah.
Dude.
July, yeah. And water dragons not far behind. I had a little bit of a break with October and November, but then December, January, and I guess February I had a break this month, but they're coming.
How many total sailfins have you hatched so far?
I want to say last year it was around 20, 24, 26. I'd have to double check my notes. I mean, every single one of them got an ID. And then already for 2026, I had clutch of 5. And then a couple weeks ago, I had 5 eggs, but I only had 2 hatch. And hopefully my last clutch of 2025 will be out any day next week. So
damn,
I'll be 5 more. And then I'll have a little bit of a break from the sailfins because since, you know, these were all the clutches from last year, any clutches that will hopefully be starting to get laid this year will be hatching come July again. So I'll have a little bit of a break. And then if it's anything like last year, I'll have babies till February 2027.
That's crazy. So how many adult female sailfins do you have at this point?
Just 3. And then I've got a 4th female that's being a raise up. She's a 2024 girl. So she'll be ready to go 2027, 2028 minimum. I need to hold back another boy. I've been the thing right now is space. Forever I am envious of the snake people. You're like, oh, I want to hold this back. Into the Sterilite tub you go. Yeah, I can't do that with a sailfin. So
yeah.
I'm to say I'm desperately like rearranging my room right now would be an understatement. I have been like redrawing some floor plans just to see like where I could fit some grow out setups. But in all honesty, with my current career change, I'm kind of hoping come next year, I'll just be able to move into a little bit bigger of a space. Sure. And so instead of relying on this current clutch, you know, the current clutches that I'm getting, wait till I have like my last clutch ideally hatch. So that way I can just hold back the youngest sailfin possible. And then from there, you know, grow it up. Because I don't want to stunt it or anything or be under prepared, you know, if something happens. So I've got a rough idea, but, you know, at the same time, I'm just really happy that they're doing well here. You know,
100%.
I was trying to think, I don't know if anybody else in the United States last year produced Philippine sailfins. There was one guy in Canada who hatched a few clutches, and that dude, Honest, he's up in Canada, legendary Pustullatus keeper. He's been around for a long time, and he's pretty consistent at producing them. But when I talked with Scott, I know he had rearranged some stuff, so none of his went, and I'm not sure of anybody else who hatched Philippines. So not too bad for 2025. I'll take it, right? You know, what was that? 7 clutches that hatched back to back to back to back. That's enough for me.
Yeah, I could imagine so. I'd feel the same way. Wow. I mean, man, imagine if I told you even 2 years ago that was going to happen.
Bro, I wouldn't have believed it. I did not think I would get that lucky. I mean, for this soon too, but you know, I feel pretty blessed with the opportunity, man. Like listening to Casey, listening to Scott, like everybody that gave me guidance and I just had to sort of implement and average out that advice, and it worked. So I think this year's going to be the real test, though, since I have a different male in the lineup. So now it's the same females, which I have that advantage of. They're sort of all cycled in, but the real test is going to be this new male who came in last fall, and I want to give him a shot this year, so that way there's completely unrelated options. So the John Steele male that produced all of the babies last year, and this male is an F1.
Okay.
So he's fresh blood. He doesn't look the prettiest. He's got some nice purple and yellow, but he still sort of has some of the brownish tints that were classic of those first Philippine sailfins that came back in the 80s and whatnot. So his parents, I believe, they were wild caught, and they came in on a shipment of questionable legality in the late 2010s.
Okay.
And this is the prodigy of some of those adults. So I'm very excited to be working with this bloodline. But he's a young buck. He's only about 3. Yeah, he just turned 3 years old. So we're going to see how he does. I'm not, if anything, I won't be as flooded with babies, assuming he doesn't produce as many viable eggs. But even if I could get, say, 2 to 3 babies a clutch out of him, I'd be very happy about that. And then it's only going to get better as he ages, obviously.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. So at this point then, with that introduction of the new male, how many distinctive bloodlines of Philippines are you working with?
As far as pure bloodlines, that would be 4. And then my one female, she's a cross, or she's I guess we're going to put this in like snake terms. You could say she's a designer outcross, right? She's like a pure Scott Corning line female, bred, or I guess, yeah, she'd be a pure female, or yeah, designer outcross, because her dad is a Steele Corning bloodline mix, and then her mom is the sister to the one that I call the queen, a really high purple one, and so this is the daughter of that. So it'd be very similar to the majority of the babies I made last year, but the dad's lineage is different, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So,
but it's not a cross where it's a hybrid, just not
a hybrid. When I say like cross, I'm talking different. Yeah, I don't have any hybrid sailfins in my care.
25% is something else. Philippines.
Yeah, no, I guess when I'm saying a cross, I'm referencing like the bloodline, right? Yeah. So, at John Steele, Jay's Arboreals, you might hear people say, oh, I've got a Steele line this, I've got a Steele. The question is, what were the parents from John Steele? That's what I always ask, because at John Steele's prime of breeding Philippine sailfins back in the late 2010s, he had 5.5, and 3.3 of those were wild caught unrelated animals. Okay. And so this 4th female that I'm raising up is from, I'll just say for the sake of ease of example, pair A on the dad's side. And then the male that I had in the breeding rotation last year from John Steele's lineages was from his pair B. So, even though they're both John Steele stock, it's one bloodline from a wild-caught pair and the male that I had. So it's still unrelated, even though the bloodline or the animals originate as propagated by the same person.
Got it.
I suck at wording this stuff just because, again, I didn't think I'd be getting to this point. So it's weird having to process like, holy crap, some of the stuff I was writing on my spreadsheets back in college of hypothetical pairings and how to avoid inbreeding and outcrossing pure documented lineages. It's like, holy crap, I just hatched some of that in my incubator, like it's a weird feeling to see that coming to fruition, and knowing that there's people out there who have bought these lizards from me that are truly getting, not to sound like I'm sitting on too high of a horse here, but like some of the best pure Philippine sailfins they can get with pedigree bloodlines. Yeah. And that's just something I've probably talked about it in the past. Well, I know I've talked about it off show with you, but it's just that idea of people constantly saying we need to police ourselves in the hobby. So if people think I'm just trying to be some master marketer and I'm full of crap saying this, it's like, well, I'll give you, Scott Corning's email. It's on his website. Ask him, do I have animals he produced? He'll tell you when he sold them, right? Like if you don't believe me, talk to the guy I'm claiming it's from. Then, you know, I can get people the contact info for the people that I got the John Steele mail from, and they sent me screenshots of their Facebook Messenger exchange with John back in 2017 with the info on, and I'm sure they'll send that stuff too, right? Like I don't, you know, and yeah, just trying to keep them around and keep them pure, I guess. But it's an exciting time, and now with this new boy in the rotation, there's one female in particular I'm praying he breeds with, because it wouldn't be the most purple blood. I know I sort of went a little bit more into the purple line stuff faster than I would have wanted, because my original goal was just good outcrossing of genetics. But this F1 with one of my females is going to be huge if they make good babies, because they won't be the best colorful looking babies, but the lineage of them being pure and bringing in that, you know, F1 to her line is just going to create a beautiful mix of a pure Philippine that can be used to breed into some of those other line bred animals that have sort of not been fully outcrossed. So
what is so what is so unique about that female?
Well, she's to my knowledge one of two in the country. She's from Bayan in Ukraine. That's her lineage. Yeah. And so she isn't line bred, you know, really good, just, you know, pure Philippine, right? I even messaged the director at Bayan a while back asking where they obtained them, and they had got them as F1s from a private hobbyist. And if I'm not mistaken, they sent like the info, and I want to say it was like from a zoo in either Germany or Poland. It's one of there were some German imports that came in from Josh Alder, so I might be having just off of the top of my head them swapped, but I want to say it was either German zoo or it was a Poland zoo that Bayan got their stock from, or I have it the other way around. I have it listed on the spreadsheet, so if anybody's curious, shoot me a message on Instagram or an email after the show and I can get that info. But the idea is that, you know, she doesn't have a lot of the high purple like some of the line bred stuff from Scott's work, and so being able to, in theory, breed her with an F1, all of those babies, I mean, that's just asking to breed those to some of the line bred stuff and just add new genes, and then, you know, outcross and then add that back to the parents or something, and then continue creating really nice high purple pustullatus, but without a high degree of inbreeding. So that's the goal.
Like, looking forward to your next generation of breeding, what is your goal? Like, once you're working with F2s for the most part, I guess, entirely at that point would be F2s. What is your, obviously, you know, you want to produce the most beautiful ones possible, but do you have the lineages mapped out where you're like, all right, I want to have this pair of F1s, and then with these babies, then take them to babies from over here, or even to founders? Like, do you have those thoughts kind of mapped out at this point?
Not at all, because I didn't think I'd get this far so fast.
I don't believe you for some reason.
No, I know. I'm genuinely speaking the truth. I didn't think it would happen this quickly with this many. So I need to sit down and start planning some stuff, because the biggest thing is, at the end of the day, we know that from Scott Corning's work, from John Steele's work, like, these animals can be line bred and they don't seem to have drastic effects of inbreeding. But the reality is too, is that as far as it goes, we're not getting any new bloodlines into the country. So I feel like I wouldn't mind trying to line breed again to create, like you said, some of the most beautiful high purple males. And then, you know, even the one female I'm working with that's line bred, just the black reticulation bleeding along her face with the purple spikes. I'm hoping it sort of just brings more appreciation to the females in general. You know, I get so many messages from people wanting to buy babies, and it's, can you get me a male? Can you get me a male? It's like, these things are sold as unsexed. It's not like snakes where I could just pop them. You know, I can try and candle the base. But the reality is, I'm hoping that with, you know, ideally these dreams of line breeding, to where it's like, you're going to get a killer looking male, or you're going to get an absolutely incredible looking female. Because ideally with the line breeding, both sexes are going to have the purple and the black reticulation. So that's my hope. But like I said, I guess I need to sort of sit and see who I want to outcross to with what. So
So at this point, do you have a thought as to, once everything is cranking the way that it should, a clutch count or a baby count per year that you're kind of shooting for? And then I guess then how would that change once you start to produce some of the other sailfin species? Do you kind of consider that as total sailfins into the market, or of the different species, or do you kind of consider them as separate from one another from a market standpoint?
It's hard to say. I mean, I'm not a marketing guy, that's my problem. I just like
I'm trying to make you one. You need to be.
Yeah. I like putting two lizards together and making them make more lizards. But I mean, this was a lot of sailfins, I won't lie. And sometimes, especially in the winter when the clutches were still hatching and I couldn't ship, going from 5 to 10 to 15 babies, all those babies got to eat. And the sailfins grow a lot faster than the water dragons. I've got what's it called? Like a photo one that I sent to somebody. By 8 weeks of age, it was pushing almost a foot long.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to maintenance feed them because then they're going to get stunted. And then they sort of look like those. I don't know if you've ever seen like a maintenance fed bearded dragon where they get like the bulging eyes and their skulls are still short and they're only like 6 inches. I mean, it's just, they're only getting fed mealworms because the people can't sell them. So,
as is the case with a lot of reptiles, you can look at a 2-year-old and be like, that was fed properly, and you're like, that person was pinching pennies. So
yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, there's some variation. I've just noticed like within a clutch, you're gonna have dominant eaters who grow faster. So then I add a little bit more food, but then the other ones do catch up. But I like I said, it's not like I'm gonna have a year-old sailfin that's gonna be for 16 inches or something. I mean, I don't know how fast they can truly grow because I've never raised one up from a baby. But
yeah,
the yearling that I got from Scott, she was right at around like 18. I guess she was probably around 18 inches at a year old, and now she's pushing like 26. So she's growing fast now. He was raising her outside, which was cool though. And I've heard comments from a basilisk breeder in Kentucky that when he was keeping some of his stuff outside, they actually ate less. And he was thinking it was like a lot of the stimulus and stuff outdoors. They're seeing birds overhead. They're not really in a box where the only thing that's moving is worms in a bowl.
Yeah.
So small tangent there aside. I mean, I personally feel like, if I could produce 15 to 25 a year just in Philippines, that'd be great. And then the Indonesian stuff, man, like all my Indonesian species I'm still raising up. I just got a clutch of 4 eggs from my Celebensis literally 2 days ago or 3 days ago, but they were bad. So that's her 11th clutch with me though. So like she's ready, but my male, I still think he needs a little bit more size. He's only about 32 inches now, so I just think
feeding time.
Yeah, I mean he eats a lot too. I mean the other day he ate about half a fillet of tilapia, so. Yeah, he's getting there. But I was thinking though, the Celebensis, it's a larger sailfin, almost similar to Microlophus, maybe more Cyclura-like, and they're wild caught. So it simply just might be taking them longer. And I know Casey Schultz, she produced 2 clutches of Celebensis last year, and those are animals she had been raising since 2019. Wild caught babies, she just grew them up the right way, and I guess in my case, my female's probably ready, but the male, you never know the age.
Think she's ready?
Yeah.
11 clutches.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's ready. But I don't know. So I don't know. Maybe I gotta twist my friend's arm if they've got a bigger male Celebensis and I can just throw them in there real quick. But the thing is, it's just they're such a well-bonded pair. I don't have to split her from him, and it doesn't bother her when she nests. Whereas, the Pustellatus, I raise those individually. So they, that's putting the female in with the male and praying nobody kills each other. Which, at least that's what Scott told me. He said with Philippines, there's no smooth talking. So I got that going. But the celibate, yeah, I just think it's going to happen one of these days. So we'll see. And then if I get more space, it's not like I'm in a rush to breed all the Indonesian species. I personally I like raising stuff up from babies. I think
Yeah,
it's fun, and it's sort of a way for me also to know that I can what's it called? Provide the right care to get them to breed. Something I've noticed, at least with some people who have sail fins, is they just start out with perfect adults, and then they just keep a pair together, and it's like, hey, they bred, right? And then 3 to 5 years go by, hey, they bred again. And ideally, I'd like to be a little bit more consistent. And so sometimes I feel like by forcing myself to lock in on any species of reptile I work with, but in this case, the sail fins, right? Like starting with babies or juveniles, waiting those 3 to 5 years to raise them up properly, I would like to imagine it's showing me that I know what I'm doing. If there's going to be any issues with raising them, well, I'm going to encounter them when they're going through their growth spurts. Yeah. And then ideally figuring out how to get them to cycle, as opposed to trying to possibly get away with subpar care and husbandry techniques and then just getting a perfect adult fresh out of the wild that you can't screw up because it already grew perfectly and it's just going to subsist in an enclosure and occasionally breed. So
I get that.
That's sort of my thought. I did that with the water dragons, and that was, I should say, a highlight from, I know I've been talking about the sail fins, but from the last time I was on the show, I officially bred an F1 Chinese water dragon that I produced.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
That was like a full circle moment for me. Those babies hatched in December, and it was a 2020 baby. So I produced it in 2020, and it was right before I transferred to my new college. So I gave my 2 clutches to my buddy, Ryan Shermell, over at Boreas Exotics. So he hatched and he sold the clutch. And a friend of mine ended up getting this female that they're like, oh, it was captive bred by a person in that Schaumburg area. I was like, well, that came from Ryan because he's from Schaumburg area, but those were from my pair. And so they gave me the female back, and she didn't lay any eggs last year, and I think that's just because when I got her, she needed a whole year and then I don't know, with the heat spike, she just suddenly cycled, and I've got a second clutch from her incubating right now. So really cool. I mean, they're technically not F2s because I bred her back to a really nice wild caught male I've got, but just kind of cool. Like, wow, I have lizard grandbabies from my original pair. Rest in peace by my stellar male Ozzy. I sadly lost him last year, but I still have my original female. I've had her for 13 years.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah, I want to get like a photo. I don't know how they'd react or if they'd try and eat the baby, but I'd love to get like a photo of the grandma with her daughter and then the baby. But that could also end in disaster. So we'll see. Maybe I'll just have to picture though. It would be a really cool photo. I've thought about that, and then the real dream one day would be to reenact that photo that I think Brandon Van Asten took forever a bit, but like ideally I have a photo of like all 5 or 6 type of sail fins captive bred in my hand. I think he did something like that with monitors. Yeah, but that'd be the dream. But like I said, it was like you said, 2 years ago, if you would have told me I'd be breeding sail fins at this quantity, I would not have believed it. So I'm going to keep riding the high, man. I'm so happy with it. Sometimes it's a lot of work, and I won't lie, I do feel a bit overwhelmed, but it's like, what would I rather be doing, right? I asked for this, I definitely got it, and I'm happy to know that I can do it. So now it's just sort of trying to breed for myself and see where I want to go from here, right?
Yeah, no doubt. So question, do you know the longevity record for Chinese water dragons?
I think when I was visiting Scott 3 years ago, he had a buddy visiting with him too, and he said he had one that lived like into the 20s. So I'm hoping this one pushes it.
Yeah, set the record.
I would love to. Yeah, I think, it just comes down probably to good genetics and good care, and I'd like to think I'm doing well for her. She actually laid a clutch of eggs last week, that old girl. She hasn't laid in 2 years.
Damn.
Yeah, they were really gross, and I mean they were bad slugs. Yeah. But she fully nested and passed them. So, she's doing her thing. But I was like, wow, why is she digging? Why is she stopping to eat? And sure enough, there was like 8 gnarly looking eggs that I dug up, and she was really thin. So I was like, oh, that's why. But old girl still got it, right? So
Wow.
that's always good. But that, for that age, definitely a little concerning. So,
Yeah.
I fear one day she's going to go into a cycle and she's not going to be able to lay. But as long as she keeps doing it, God bless that.
Not much you can do at that point,
Yeah. Hey, I'll take 13 years already, right? Like, she's rocking. So,
sure.
And especially considering, she's the amount of trial and error of care she had to start out with, I do hope maybe one of these days, like, with some of my holdbacks that I'm raising up, those will be some of the real tests. Now that, not trying to brag, I'd like to think I have water dragon care dialed in just a little bit. So being able to raise them up literally from animals that have hatched with me, I have a pair that are 8 months old now, and that male's pushing like 22 inches, and he's perfect, no nose rub, tall spikes. So I'm hoping that'll be a good example. Hopefully not only a future breeder, and so then once again I could work towards making true F2s by breeding unrelated captive bred water dragons, but then ideally have him around possibly for 20 plus years. That'd be awesome. So
absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see. But
that's awesome.
That's a lot of lizard talk. I'm sorry.
No, dude. As you were saying beforehand, there's not enough lizard talk on this show, and I totally agree. So, I got to get the lizard talk in when I can on this here program, because there's not that much of it. So, I will say though, giving lizards a whole lot more of a platform than like chelonians or amphibians. I haven't done shit for that. So,
yeah, there's some cool turtle and tortoise keepers that I know. So if you ever want them, I could always try reaching out. Just with some of the turtle and tortoise people I know, they've been around for a while. There's actually a really big turtle and tortoise community in like Illinois. I had a buddy do like a little fest of it, and like some of the people I recognized, I was like, "You guys keep chenolians?" And they thought I did, but I was just invited and talking turtles and the knowledge and the history. Because again, chenolians have such a long lifespan. The history of some of their animals, and I was just sitting there absorbing knowledge. And they're very passionate keepers, and it's unfortunate that they're not highlighted enough. And I do think part of it probably is just due to the longevity. It's not, lizards and snakes seem to be in that like perfect happy medium of anywhere from, like 10 to 15 years average, to where like an average person can keep one for a while, but then if the animal passes away, they often get out of the hobby. Whereas if you're keeping even a box turtle, that's going on your will. So which that reminds me, I think I'm still on my friend's will for their 2 sulcatas, so I might have to get that amended.
Oof. It's like,
it sounded like a great idea in high school, but I'm having some regrets. So,
Oh man.
But chenolians are very cool. Even if you're not keeping them, just to study them and see them.
Sure.
A lot of diversity. I remember when I was in Costa Rica for my last class, I saw like a white-faced scorpion mud turtle, really beautiful. Just this Central American, like similar to like those African helmeted turtles you see come in, but this bright white like stripe on the face, super pretty.
Wow.
And then like right above it in the tree was a basilisk lizard. So
nice.
Get to appreciate stuff like that. Or even the ones that we can't keep. I have fond memories of it would have been 7 years ago. I did a family trip to Hawaii. I'm swimming right next to some of the sea turtles, just admiring them for what they are. So small things like that.
No doubt. Absolutely. Man. Well, should we get into some of these topics here that we've got for the episode?
You're going to debate time. 2 years, twice the controversy.
Exactly. So I'll let you go ahead and pick which one you want to hit on that list first.
Yeah, well, before we get to that, I know the regular listeners of your show probably want to hear some updates for you. So you were just asking me a bunch of my stuff. What's new with the Scrub Shepherd? How is the flock?
Well, as some of you may know, I'm a little bit superstitious about talking about breeding before anything is coming full circle. But I would say
don't talk about like how are the holdbacks doing. We don't need to jinx the breeding. Like,
yeah, well, I would say
excited?
year over year, if you were to ask me the same question last year, I definitely feel better this year than I did a year ago. I'd like to think that I've corrected some mistakes that I was making, mostly thanks to the Python god himself, Ryan Young. All hail. If it wasn't for him, I might still be in the same boat right now. But we'll see. So time will tell on that. But yeah, I mean, holdbacks are doing great. The babies that I produced last year, this is my best year as far as from the standpoint of raising babies. I didn't have one baby from 2025 that I needed to assist feed or anything like that. So that's super nice. I just have one that wants live at this point, but it'll eat it. So, and as somebody who breeds rodents, that is not a concern. So that's pretty good. And then I'm definitely, over the summer in particular, I really kind of did like an audit of the collection and thinned down a lot of side projects, so to speak, species and individuals that I knew I could get back into at a certain point in time again if I ever wanted to, but weren't necessarily a top focus of my breeding. Just I felt too spread thin just with the attention that I had to give stuff last year, and my production reflected it. So especially with with the scrubs and the spilotes, how much I'm really trying to push for that. Like, I just don't need a lot of distractions. So I just felt like I've been able to pay a lot more attention this year, get feeding right, get timing right on stuff, and just not have it be overwhelming. So, hopefully that ends up playing out well. So because of that, I feel a lot better about stuff. I mean, yesterday I brought a bunch of colubrids out of brumation. Pretty cool. So, the ball will be getting rolling on them very shortly here as far as feeding, pairing, and hopefully I'll have the first pairings within like the next week or so, just to kind of get stuff going, especially at the Pituophis. They'll start doing their thing pretty much right away out of brumation, and you don't want to miss that window either. So but yeah, thin down some of the adults a little bit for kind of diversifying in species and localities, some younger animals. So, like, for instance, last year I had 2.3 Kankakee bull snakes. I just have a pair this year, but the nicest pair that I had, and really just trying to, dial in that one pair. If I could get a, 10 egg clutch or something like that, shoot, I'd be thrilled. So that's kind of where I'm at. Venomous will be coming up pretty soon here. I'm currently increasing basking. I don't think I'm going to feed until after Tinley, but by then they'll have full basking again. I'm already walking in there. Even a few weeks ago, not a whole lot of responsiveness, not a lot of snakes basking for the maybe hour of basking that they had, and now by noon, many snakes are out. Some of them are looking for food already. So it's definitely that time of year. We have a little bit like a warm snap, kind of like what you said you had back in the fall. We're in the 80s for the next week here, which is uncharacteristic for the time of year. I think average temps are like mid 60s right now. So when I saw that, I was like, it's probably time to bring these guys up. So kind of took advantage of that. And if it wasn't like this week, it would be next week. So anyway, a lot of thought process went into when to bring them up, but they've been down since Thanksgiving, or right before Thanksgiving. So they had an ample brumation. So yeah, excited about getting those pairs going. And at this point, it's just time will tell. It's, hopefully the preparation was correct, and all you can do from there is just hope that the animals do the rest. So
Not too bad.
Tim, I'm not sure if you're just checking into the show now. Are you in contact, Alex, with anybody in the Philippines who breed sail. I'm sorry, I read your question wrong. So yeah, Alex, are you in contact with anybody in the Philippines who breed sailfins?
Sadly not.
Hmm.
From what I understand, you're technically not supposed to own them. They're protected there now. I believe
Okay.
there are some zoos, but in order to export, the zoos have to have proof that they're F2s.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
I don't know of any like hardcore zoos that are really trying to breed them.
Mm.
I don't know how much I'm allowed to say on the show. I can say one of my females is from a zoo. I got permission to obtain her. So as far as genetic diversity, like if I could get F2 straight from Philippine zoo stock, that would be awesome. But at the same time, the lineage of the animals that I had, like at least this girl that is from, like she's contributing quite a bit. She isn't the most productive female of mine because she's older. I got like 3 clutches of duds out of her, and I only hatched 1 good clutch of babies out of her. But the babies that hatched, it was like 3 out of 4 eggs. So I've seen her lock with the new male. I think it's just a matter of me trying to figure out her cycle. She stumps me because of her age. So, my young girls, when they go back to back on clutches, it's anywhere from 37 to 42 days back to back to back. Okay. And this older girl, I had actually spoken to the Lindsay brothers when I was in Alaska. That's the reptile barn because they have an older female. I don't know the lineage on their collection. They never had paperwork of it, but they said her cycles of their older female were about every 55 to 65 days, and that seems to be what this girl is doing. But she's weird though because she'll do like 2 clutches back to back and then she just stops. Whereas usually with my younger girls, they're giving me anywhere from 3. The one girl last year laid 6 clutches back to back, and then they take their break. So I do, if I could get stuff directly from the Philippines, that'd be great. But like legally, I don't know anybody who could do that. So
got it. All right.
Yeah, but at least I've got something. So I don't believe I'm allowed to state like the zoo or whatnot. But the point is, since it's now in my possession as a private keeper, like I can distribute those offspring. But I'll tell you, between me and the person that I got their mail from last year, of those 3 babies, we held all those back. So
cool.
Kind of want to keep that outcrossed bloodline for future stuff. So,
no doubt.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Hell yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I guess we should get started.
Yes. Yeah. I just figured. I know we had talked outside of
Actually, before we get started, though, Lisa did ask a good question. Are the older females bigger?
Hey, Lisa. I actually have to thank you. I again don't know how much I can say, but I talked with Lisa a while back off of the podcast. So thank you for the advice that I got from you, and everything is going well. But
very cryptic. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I might as well. I guess I probably should have shot her a message. But congrats, you're getting it live directly on Kush's Corner. But yeah, the older female is bigger, and she was a little chunky when I got her. And so I mean, not to compare a gamid lizard to a, from what I hear on the snake talk, but I had to slim her down a bit, and I think that could have been why her first few clutches were infertile, and then it took me a while back. But now she's laying more consistently. I'm hoping she's gravid right now. She's been digging, but
nice.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, her last clutch was in January. And sadly, those were bad. So
okay,
that's how it goes. You win some, you lose some.
No doubt you do. Well, actually, you know what? Considering the time of the episode, just to not break up our flow, I think we should hit the commercials before we hit some of these discussion topics. So we'll do that real quick. So sit tight, everybody. We will be back in just a few minutes.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, and that's the one and only Morph Market and Morph Market shipping. One of the biggest exciting things about the reptile hobby over the past couple of years is Morph Market shipping taking everything to the next level. Anything as far as reptile purchasing or selling needs can all be done on Morph Market's website, so I highly suggest you go check it out, especially if you're in the market of purchasing your first, second, or third, or fourth reptile. You can find a bunch of legitimate breeders on Morph Market's platforms. They stand very tall on representing the best breeders we have in the hobby, so don't look anywhere else when it comes to looking for your new reptile. Not to mention, if you're looking for aquatics or your next plant, Morph Market's a spot for you as well. Make sure you head over to morphmarket.com, and the best thing about Morph Market's platform, you could ship directly from their website with Morph Market shipping. Morph Market shipping has saved this hobby millions of dollars as a whole. I myself saved thousands with Morph Market shipping last year due to their insanely cheap rates, so definitely go take advantage of these rates on top of the amazing customer service that comes along with Morph Market shipping. Shout out to Darian and Zach, and shout out to the entire Morph Market team. So proud to be a part of this team. Thank you so much for Morph Market shipping and Morph Market. So excited to announce this partnership, and so excited to announce new Morph Market features that are going to be hitting the reptile hobby real soon, like live sales on Morph Market. Thank you so much, Morph Market and Morph Market shipping. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, Workshop Reptilium. Josh Hansen is doing things different over in his facility. He has one of the most diverse, beautiful reptile collections currently in the reptile hobby today, but he is doing things differently when it comes to enclosures, thinking outside the box, giving these reptiles bigger enclosures. I feel like it's something this hobby needs. So a lot of exciting stuff to come from Workshop Reptilium. I'm going to be flying up to his place to give you guys a deeper look into his facility, and I'm also excited to have an episode with Josh so he can explain himself where his goals are headed when it comes to keeping. Thank you so much, Josh Hansen over at Workshop Reptilium. Make sure you head over to Instagram, make sure you head over to Facebook. Also, make sure you subscribe to him on YouTube. You can find all the links in the description below. Again, thank you so much, Josh, over at Workshop Reptilium. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, brought to you by ZooMed.
ZooMed is proud to be supporting the Trap Talk Reptile Network. At ZooMed, reptiles are our passion. For over 48 years, we've been creating premium foods, supplies, and habitats for reptiles and other exotic animals. We're a company made up of hobbyists that test our products on the hundreds of animals that we care for here every single day. Whether you're an established breeder or a first-time hobbyist picking up your first ball python, ZooMed has you covered with everything you need to keep your animals happy and healthy.
I'm excited to talk about this new product with ZooMed called the Slither Sense. It is a remote temperature and humidifying monitoring system, which we all know how important temperature and humidity is to your reptile. And for you to have remote access to your temperature and your humidity in your reptile room could really, really be a game changer for the longevity of you keeping reptiles. So guys, make sure you check out that product. Find the link in the description below. Click on it right now. Give me your feedback in the comments below. Let me know how you're liking a brand new ZooMed product.
Alrighty, everybody, we are back. Hello, hello. All right, so what is our first topic, Sir Alex?
Yeah, I guess before the previous questions that were asked, I figured for the second half of this show, just it's been 2 years of the podcast, 2 years of conversations. A lot of topics are often revisited, and a lot of opinions and perspectives change. So I figured, you've interviewed a lot of people. I've sort of seen how perspectives have changed just on and off social media and talking to people at the different shows I attend. So I figured I made a list of some topics and where do we think they're changing? If we debate a little bit, friendly debate, sort of like why we feel the way we feel about it. And I don't know, maybe people listening will have their own insights and whatnot. And so after the live is ended, just putting it in the audio here, feel free to comment on this video what you're thinking of a specific topic and why. So for the first thing, I just figured UVB, lighting in general for reptiles.
Dun, dun, dun.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Has anything changed about it? And I mean, like lighting in general, like is it heat lamps versus panels versus tape? I know you did an episode with Chris Rice a while back, and he talks about how he literally uses the sun coming into his room.
Yeah.
Is that something you're looking to possibly implement in your care? I've got sort of my opinions and things that I've been using it, but I'm keeping lizards. Yeah. And just sort of, I'll let you hand it off.
Yeah. So, I'm a very much a casual observer of the lighting world, just considering I'm exclusively a snake guy. You know, one thing that I'm not nearly qualified enough to talk about, but I think could be interesting as far as findings going forward. Some of the new studies coming out about LEDs, and I think it's mitochondrial disruption, just in beings in general, that these LED lights are probably not very good for us in the long run. So, you know, what does it do subjecting our animals to these, you know, kind of quick strobe-like wavelengths constantly? But then what's the alternative? The thing that's so great about LEDs, obviously, is that, you know, they produce very minimal heat, and especially in a, you know, like in like a PVC enclosure or some sort of fully enclosed space, even a T5 bulb can get so hot that it's unusable. You know, not to mention any variation of heat bulbs. So, you know, it's interesting. I just don't know if there's a viable alternative out there to these LEDs. And then, you know, we were talking a little bit yesterday about the UV world and just how it seems like it's a little stagnant, maybe. Do you think that might be the right word to describe it, Alex?
Just seems like almost not stagnant, but very set in its ways. But then the moment something changes or something new happens, it's like there are people that shift to that, but then you still have people who are set in their way of things. And, you know, at the end of the day, and, you know, I use UV on pretty much everything because I have lizards. My snakes don't have UV on them currently, but I have kept them with UV in the past. And I don't keep any of my feeder bugs with UV. But
God, abuser.
There have been some there are studies that I've read that show when exposed to UV light, a lot of bugs skyrocket in vitamin D3, which sort of goes into why I choose to supplement with vitamin D3, because I'm breeding insects in a non-vitamin D3 producing environment. So if I supplement with it, right, the lizards that I keep are diurnal, but I'm feeding nocturnal insects. So the point though is that you know, for the longest time, all the rave has been, you know, like the fluorescent lights, right? It was the T8 bulbs, and then mercury vapor bulbs came out, and then T5 bulbs came out, and then everybody's like, mercury vapor bulbs are bad, and now LEDs came out, and some people were preaching LEDs, and now all the people that like LEDs are like, well, these are great, but now all the hardcore T5 people are stating that everything that isn't a T5 is terrible. So there just seems to be some inconsistency there of, you know, what works. And I'd have to agree with you. I did try some LED UVB lights a while back from a company, and they worked great for about the first 2 years. And I don't know if it's because it was like the prototype one, but I had kept them on my snakes. And I had noticed the scale over the eye, these are corn snakes that I have, was like getting cloudy. I was wondering if it was exposure to the radiation, but, you know, I'd used this LED now for 2 years, and they claimed to last 4 years, but I ended up taking those out, and within a shed, the eyes cleared up. So I haven't kept them with UV since. But since that, I've listened to your episodes that you've done with Terry. I have been focusing more on like this occasional supplementation, even for my snakes, carotenoid supplementation, vitamin D3 supplementation. And I actually have seen quite a bit of a change, most notably for the longest time, because I was primarily feeding a lot of chicks and mice, but I could not get my snakes to shed perfectly. I mean, these are like humid hides, repti chip substrate, everything. And yet since supplementing, you know, about every 8 weeks or so, because they're eating a whole prey item, I've since switched my snakes to aspen, so they're drier. Yet I've been having perfect sheds. So I always wonder if it was the you know what I mean? Like, it's a whole prey item, right? Like a mouse, but it's a lab grown, or like I have a local mouse breeder to me, you know, Missouri rodent diet in a tub. I know you do more grains and whatnot, but part of me was wondering, like, man, I'm getting a little bit more vitamin B1 every 8 weeks on these mice, or some D3, some carotenoids, some vitamin E. And like I said, I've had a very difficult time getting perfect one-piece sheds from corn snakes, which I was like, maybe they're just old and they're lazy, but within a solid, 2 months of me implementing the supplementation routine, I have seen the improvements. And I mean, these 2 corn snakes that I have, they were the first snakes I ever kept. They're going to be 20 this fall. So I totally just went on a tangent into supplementation and nutrition. But the point is, it's like, in the
same though,
right? In the realm of snakes here. And like, I've talked with another guy who's a major lighting guru. He has even said that he is not fully convinced snakes require UVB, but he does believe UVA wavelengths are actually very beneficial, which UVA is just visible light, right? You provide your scrub pythons, a 12 on, 12 off light cycle, pretty much what they'd experience in the wild, right? I have a smart outlet on my LEDs now that actually turns all of my corn snake setups in sync with my sunrise and sunset. So they actually get a little bit more of a light cycle now, and it's been fascinating to observe some of their behavior changes with that. Yeah. And again, it's not a UV light, but now they're experiencing up here in Minnesota, right, our 7-hour days. Now the days are coming up at around like 8.5 hours. In peak summer, they'll be 14. So, in that case, I would argue the lighting is beneficial because even though it's not a UVB light, just in the general subject of lighting that we're on, it's giving the animal options, this change in the stimulus. Even though now it's just a 3-watt, 7,000, K, 400 lumen or whatever LED, but the way I'm providing that lighting is a cycle, right? It's something a little different, and so that could be seen as beneficial. So, like I said, that's sort of my thoughts on that, at least with the snakes. With lizards, it seems to be hit or miss. At least with the species I keep, a lot of the agamids, I mean, they're known as sun worshippers. There's clearly some aspect from ultraviolet B radiation that they need to survive. Why that is, I don't know. Clearly, like, maybe they're just poor at synthesizing it or absorbing it. I don't know the physiological terminology. So, if somebody's listening, please correct me there. But I honestly think, at least for those lizards, if you don't provide it, it's clear they get metabolic bone disease. But then there are other lizards like leopard geckos or like monitor lizards, which we know, predominantly like lace monitors and stuff, where people breed those all the time without access to ultraviolet B.
Right.
So is that a case where the physiology and the way that those lizards evolved, they truly get all of their D3 needs from whole prey, like a snake, right? But then I'd be curious to see, like, how do people that keep, say, garter snakes without UV, like, how do they develop, right? Because those are more of an invertebrate specialist. Or, like, do the people that keep garter snakes without UV, are they supplementing with vitamin D3? So that's just, sort of where I'm seeing it. I won't lie, I used to be very much, try and get UV on everything. I still believe if you can provide it, why not? It's not going to hurt anything as long as you're changing the bulbs out. I know you've told me about how you had a UV burn from one of your pythons. I'll call you out on here, man. Did you remember to change that light after a year, though?
I don't think it's a year.
Okay, because sometimes if those bulbs keep running, then they start to emit UVC, which is harmful. Right. So was it a UVB burn or possibly UVC? But yeah, it's exactly. If you didn't know, it could be either. But in my opinion, it's one of those things where and this is just my opinion. Let me also clarify this too. Like, I'm not basing this off of facts, purely just anecdotally from working with a large collection of snakes at my previous jobs, where I was housing everything in rack systems, and then having kept my own personal snakes with UV and whatnot, and then listening to other people's experiences. It seems like the lighting conversation is changing, and we're starting to realize that it's not necessarily a idea of needing UVB, but more so what benefits do you get if you do provide it, and if you choose not to, how can you still just provide benefits from lighting in general? And that's sort of, I guess, why I wanted to start off this first half of the conversation with UV and lighting, because like I said, I've been doing this LED light cycle with my corn snakes, and I'm seeing behaviors from them that I never got when I had them with UV. But is it because I changed the light cycle? Is it because now they're getting a more nutrient-rich, supplemented diet with lighting? I mean, these are all quite. I'm learning right along with this. So hopefully with it being on podcast form, somebody might, again, point something out and comment on the video too. But
sure. So something that I don't have enough knowledge to know, but I've always kind of wondered is, is there a bit of a continuum between the diet and the light? Like if you have the lighting down, but you're giving your animal this really kind of sterile calories in, calories out diet, will they still gain those benefits, or do you need those nutrients present in the diet for the light to therefore synthesize it properly?
I know with calcium, that's why they need it. If the lighting is not present, they cannot fully synthesize calcium.
Okay.
At least with lizards, because there are some, like a lot of agam lizards, where you tried to raise a bearded dragon solely on vitamin D3 and calcium, like calcium supplement with vitamin D3, dusting the bugs that way, they're not going to do well.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I know most people who do monitors do that, and they do great. So again, I do wonder to some extent, like, a lot of people who do monitors, sometimes they're feeding day-old quail. It's not the same as a nutrient-dense adult quail, and people just breed so many monitors. But you could also argue that monitors have evolved to be expert nest raiders. So is their physiology designed to just, absolutely ransack a nest of, 4 to 5 baby birds that were just born, right? And live off of those multiple nutrient poor organisms, relatively speaking. Although I'd like to imagine, even if they find a fresh nest, that mama bird's already been feeding the babies a far diverse diet than the grain or whatever that a factory quail has.
Sure.
But yeah, man, not to sound crazy, I think it truly just comes down to species dependent.
Yeah.
Like that's the reality. Like to generalize snakes, what is that? Like 4,000 or 7,000 species? No, I think 4,000. Maybe it's 7,000. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think there's 4,000 colubrids alone.
Okay, so probably just thousands of snakes. We're gonna be like, none of them need UV. I mean, that's crazy. It's
a bit reductionist. Yeah.
But to say most pythons do fine without it. Well, decades of anecdotal keeping and breeding. People have been breeding them, even before the UV light was invented, right? I have a copy of Ross's book on my bookshelf over there. I can confirm this, but at the same time, with a lot of these lizards, success with captive propagation did not start until people were utilizing UV light. Or, I've also got Bert Langerworth's book on there. He was breeding so many species outside because he just knew that the vitamin D3 from the sun was important for them to function. And at the time, he didn't know why. And I have a rough idea of the vitamin D3 cycle, but to compare a Chinese water dragon to a leopard gecko and a leopard gecko to, say, like a Shinosaurus, totally different. So,
yeah, I mean, but you'd think that naturally you could draw probably some sort of very basic line of need or not need based on nocturnal or diurnal life habits. Wouldn't you assume that any nocturnal species has evolved to synthesize these micronutrients without ample sunlight?
I mean, I do know there's some published papers on that, with leopard geckos being very efficient at synthesizing vitamin D3 from the diet, or they're more effective at producing it with low levels of UV. So,
got it. This question here actually is kind of right on that same line. So would crested geckos then benefit from UV since MBD is common with them? Do we know that they can still absorb the calcium and vitamin D3 without UV light?
To my knowledge, I know that's why most crested gecko breeders have the Pangea diet, because that already has synthetic or supplemental D3 in there. And so being, I guess technically, a crested gecko would be crepuscular. And I am aware that a lot of the advancing people will always suggest, if you can throw UV on it, do it. I've seen photos of crested geckos utilizing UV light. They just sort of stick their tail or their toes out. But at the same time, if somebody has a crested gecko that is getting metabolic bone disease and it's kept with UV, probably means either they just don't have the right output bulb, or this would, again, sort of purely my opinion here, they're not offering supplemental D3 in the diet. Because even a crepuscular animal like a gecko, if the only way it can get D3 is from the lighting, then it relies on eating bugs that are exposed to D3. Technically, when it ingests those bugs, it would be getting vitamin D3 in the diet. So if you're not providing that in captivity because of the mindset that all of the D3 needs are met from the UV, but metabolic bone disease is happening, well, clearly all of the D3 needs are not being met.
Right. I mean, yeah, that would have been my just base assumption, considering that the primary method of keeping crested geckos, for better or worse, is in a tub setting. So, there wouldn't be the quite literally hundreds of thousands of crested geckos in the hobby these days if that were the case. But yeah, so that the supplementation really does seem to be,
it's that.
Factor.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not one who I'm, making, even when I feed my lizards, I'm not making my bugs powder white. I just use a little bit every feeding. And I think a little bit of that with a little bit of UV lighting, and then the lizards have got options to regulate. It all balances out.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, when I was
the diet of your insects, though, is another factor that is important here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very, very picky about my gut loading, especially for the water dragons.
I mean, I have to imagine you could probably, not saying that this would be the right thing to do, but you could probably have a gut loading routine that would eliminate the need to even supplement the bugs.
Well, I believe it. Yeah, I think Timberline does that with their Vitabugs.
Yeah.
The local herpetology society by me in Minneapolis, we actually had Mark Finke visit 2 years ago. And he's the lead nutritionist for Timberline, and he was explaining their Vitabugs and how the diet actually increases. Primarily with them, they worried about vitamin A, because crickets, which are the probably still the most popular pet feeder insect,
Sure.
They empty their gut contents. It's like every 27 minutes or something. They just eat and then they poop back out. So if you try to even feed your crickets carrots, like, unless you're sitting there watching them for 15 minutes and then you instantly scoop them and feed them to your bearded dragon, you're not really getting the carotene material. This is personally why I choose roaches and superworms, but and microworms. But he was explaining that the diet, since vitamin A is fat soluble, encourages the cricket to just naturally be more dense in vitamin A. And that's way, because again, Timberline is supplying PetSmart, and a lot of these first-time keepers who might not understand about calcium and vitamin powder, or maybe they buy one or the other, so then a certain nutrient is off. And I feel like that's going to be where the future of at least feeder insects and whatnot goes, is more healthier raised feeders at a mass scale, if there's a way to do that. And knowing Timberline, they're already one of the forefront, or at the forefront of feeder insect propagation. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that was maybe the first episode we did. I mean, that's why I swear by breeding my own feeder bugs. I love knowing what I'm putting into my bugs. The fact that I can just shake out 200 dubia in a night, put them in a container with greens, and leave them there for 14 hours. So that when I'm back from work the next day, those roaches are just full. The greens are gone. Like, you can see the greens in their stomach because they don't poop it out right away like crickets. And then just knowing add a touch of calcium, a little bit of multivitamin, and then everything's well-rounded. So
nice. Hell yeah.
Definitely when it comes to that. We were talking about lighting, but I mean, it's
all one and the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely important.
Your last rant is a little bit of a foreshadowing for a near future episode. That's all I'll say for the time being. But
okay.
So I guess then, where from here, in the topic of lighting, supplementation, and how they overlap, like, what do you think is the next step in the evolution of that within the hobby / industry? Or what do you think it could be?
I mean, me personally, and again, this is just my opinion, I think people just need to get their egos aside and realize that everything in nature is in balance. And like I said, I sort of use it all, and I just rely on a little bit of everything. I have overdosed my animals on supplements in the past, and it sucks. So when I have found that if I just do a little bit every day, it goes a long way, right? At the same time, I provide lighting. It might not be as good as the regular sun, but I know if I do not keep my lizards with it, they will die and they're going to have laying problems. Whether or not I have the best UV lights, I don't know, because if I were to post onto a reptile lighting forum, I'm going to get torn apart, right? I use a little bit of everything. I've got lizards that are under mercury vapor bulbs, the Zoomed Power Sun, right? That's a sponsor of the Trap Talk Reptile Network. And I've got T5 ReptiSun bulbs, also by Zoomed. I've got, I've used Arcadia brands in the past too. I've heard people talk about reptile systems. Like a bulb, it's going to work. It's going to emit UVB. I wouldn't, you had mentioned the LEDs. Don't buy a T5 reptile lamp from a Chinese company on Alibaba or Amazon. But, some of these companies, like, we know they work. How well they work, I personally don't have enough, long time experience to say, other than that, my one female water dragon at one, pretty much at one point or another has always been under a Zoomed ReptiSun 10.0 for the past 13 years. And she's alive and she just laid eggs. At the same time, she's gotten a better diet over the years as I've learned that. So a little bit of lighting, a little bit of diet. I think if the hobby is so focused, as Lucid Arboreals had asked earlier, like UVB is the only way that your animals are going to get D3. Well, that's stupid, because if the quote unquote advancing side is preaching this, and yet we have studies that show wild insects are significantly higher in D3, especially these diurnal species like grasshoppers and katydids. I believe that was research Mark Finke also presented when I heard him speak. Then why are we not just being a little cautious about adding some supplemental D3?
Yeah.
So it's, like I said, people just got to get their egos aside. And I get it. Like, it's the part of advancing and growth that sucks, growing pains, and having to think critically about this, because I'll fully admit I'm not an expert on any of this, but I know what I know. And if you look at the anecdotal evidence from people who are very successful with different species, and then you look at the physical evidence from peer-reviewed literature, in captivity, we just sort of got to try and slowly mold them all together, kind of like a ball of clay, right? And that's kind of what I try to do. So I'm not saying I'm right, because, like I said, somebody's going to say I'm wrong keeping a lizard with a power sun bulb. But I know Scott Corning has sworn by those for 25 years, keeping sail fins, so clearly it can't be that bad. And that's the other thing I will say, at least as, again, just my opinion here, but nothing's perfect, man. Everybody wants to be the perfect keeper. I try, and I overthink things often. And I won't lie, lately, sort of my progression as a reptile keeper lately has been trying to listen to everybody, but not necessarily try to jump in like everybody. Like, take advice and sort of, like I said earlier, just slowly mold it into that ball of clay. Take a step back and just gain some insight, realize what works too, and slowly progress one thing at a time. And like I said, we're talking about lighting here, but or we were supposed to, but I feel like that's where it needs to go, is instead of trying to have, and it sucks because at the end of the day, a lot of these companies have to market. They have to have profits. They want to be the best. And until a company comes out and realizes, like, we're still not perfect, but here's the next step, I think that's when, people will realize, okay, this is actually going to be a product worth investing in, versus saying, my bulb lasts longer than this guy's bulb, even though this guy's bulb has been working well for 25 years. And I get it, because then they're going to say it's ancient old technology. Like, folklore husbandry is something that I hear all the time. It's like, is it really folklore husbandry? It's just old school, right? Like, I can just do standard division instead of long division, but I still get the same answer. I'm not even a mathematics guy. So, I get it. It's sort of focusing on that gradual change. And I do think the hobby, from what I've also seen, is progressing in that way. If we want, we can maybe discuss like what we've seen. I haven't been on social media as much, but I will say, as far as the elitist group mindset, I feel like I'm seeing less of that on social media. It could be, though, because I've also just removed myself from about every reptile Facebook group, so it's not showing up on my feed. But
yeah, I feel like you got to really be in like a particular ecosystem within the hobby to like really get that bad. Because I really don't see a lot of it either, but that also might just be that I don't associate much people who take that mindset. Obviously, they're definitely still out there without question. But yeah, that's an interesting one to think about. Yeah, but the thing is, like, having an ego about what you're doing and then also trying to actually advance science or understanding, whatever it may be, they just can't exist simultaneously. Like those two things are antithetical to each other. Like you can't have one with the other at the same time. And it's unfortunate because all of these products that are out there, they need to be marketed and sold. And like this might work. We're kind of seeing it might work if you use it with this. That's not as great of a pitch as like, this is the best bulb ever, or this supplement will solve all your problems. And, nobody's like auditing these claims in a way that's going to have any real effect. So, you can market yourself into a successful product. It doesn't mean that it was actually a good product, and could even set it back too, because someone like myself or others, like if you've had used UV in the past, didn't see much of a change, maybe got some negatives associated with it, and you were sold this bill, this bill of goods that just didn't pan out in any way, shape, or form, you're probably never going to even think about it again. So, for a short-term sale, kind of ruining a long-term potential customer, I don't know. To me, that's not really worth it.
That's where I can't comment as far as the marketing stuff goes, but yes.
All right, so what should we go to next, Sir Alex?
How do you think the debate on caging versus racks has changed in the past couple of years? I feel like it used to be hardcore, like straight up civil war, at least. And I think now there's slowly becoming a happy middle ground. But I want to hear your thoughts first.
I feel like I don't hear too many people arguing these days that racks are better. I feel like that one is a thing of the past. Like we all kind of recognize what it is. Because I mean the tale as old as time with why, particularly for ball pythons, but for a lot of species, why are we using these solid color tubs that you can't see through, light doesn't penetrate? And the pitch for the longest time was, well, these ball pythons are living in termite mounds, and when it's solidly dark all the time, they're actually more comfortable and they'll breed more. No, it was just a whole heck of a lot cheaper to produce those tubs like that than semi-clear. That was it. That was the only fucking reason they did it. And
a marketing gimmick? Question mark?
Crazy. Who would have thought? So it's like, interesting. An animal is hurt by a photo period. That's a wild thought. So I don't know. I mean, I still use racks. I'm not trying to demonize them, but I don't think that anybody's really arguing that it's better anymore, or at least anybody who's respected, maybe. And not to, like I said, not to like shit on them or demonize racks. They have their functions, and there's certain species that are much more suitable for racks than others, and different life stages of snakes as well, because there is something to be said for some species when they're younger and they're much more timid, that if they're in a glass terrarium, they're going to be potentially pretty freaked out relative to if they're in a even a semi-clear tub or a tub with a window or something like that, where they can have a much more secured portion of their enclosure. So there's definitely functionality to them, but as far as an overall goes, but I think in general, I think the hobby is the goalpost is no longer have giant production facility. Like that was the status symbol 15 to 20 years ago. And now I think the status symbol is more, a diverse collection, cool display enclosures, something that's a little bit unique, something that can be kind of your own. I think that's kind of the new, and which is good. I'm glad that it went that way. But I think at this point, there are probably very, very few people out there that are aspiring to rows and rows of racks with solid tubs you can't see your animals in. So let me know your thoughts.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is that I think people are from the because I wasn't really into the breeding side of snakes. So I mean, I've personally only ever had one rack in my personal keeping career when I had a few more snakes, and then a friend of mine ended up buying that. So, for me, I do kind of, like I said, I like that the shift is that it's not necessarily, they're not better than cages, but it's more along the lines of people are saying, hey, this is a tool used by professional breeders.
Yeah.
And if you're keeping a snake, you're going to be like me with a stack of PVCs and a Neodesha, right? Display your animals, do something cool with that, even if they're normal corn snakes, I feel like to the friends of mine who are more in the advancing circles, if you will, sometimes I jokingly say the naturalistic Nazis, but I think they're being less radical about it too.
That's good.
You know what I mean? It just seems like those conversations are just putting down breeders. It's like, who did you get your Arizona Mountain King snake from that you have in a beautiful bioactive setup? I guarantee you it was raised in a V18. I'm sorry, and then yet they'll talk crap about stuff like that. So It's a balance. They have their place. I do like that the shift more is just enjoy keeping your animals, be passionate about it. And if I'm going to be quite frank, just being a good person, I think that is the one con of, at least the past of social media is people have really gotten used to running their mouths without being punched in the face for it. If you said anything like that to me at a Tiddly show, I'm sorry, but it's just, there goes, broken nose, palm straight to the face, right? You don't do that. I was raised not to do that. That's why I'm showing my face on a podcast here, right? I'm just speaking my opinions here. I'm not trying to knock anybody down. If you're really into beautiful bioactive setups, rock on, do it. I've done stuff like that. I used to do that for frogs and stuff at an old pet shop I worked at. And at the same time, if you're into taking that next step as a professional breeder of, say, ball pythons or colubrids or, some oddball stuff, well, if you're going to expand your breeding operation and you need to make sure that the health and care of those snakes is paramount, a rack system is the tool to provide a very easy way to maintain cleanliness and organization of your animals. If the moment the work, I don't know, the way I was taught is if the reptile work feels like work, it's not a hobby anymore, and you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And that's even how I feel. I think my water setups are somewhat minimalistic for my lizards because they poop in them. So it's a lot of water changes. And I have a tub system, so everything just in and out. And it's not a pretty filtered setup. I know there are people who keep sailfins and water dragons that do it that way. But for me to maintain my breeding groups...
But how many clutches do they have?
Yeah, that is fair. But, and, Bert Langer-Wharf did the same thing for his massive Australian water dragon operation. Just large tubs of water changed daily. And he produced...
What was the term you used earlier about old school keeping? What was the...
Folklore husbandry.
Folklore, that's folklore husbandry.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's just it's that I think we're finally getting close to a handshake of it, if that makes sense.
That's good.
We know cages are great and cages offer the most flexibility. And yet at the same time, the people that were, very anti-rack are realizing, yeah, there's a lot of people who use them. There's a reason they work well. I might not choose to personally use racks. Like I said, this is coming from me too. I don't have a single rack at the moment. Yeah. And I don't have a problem with people who do. Are the animals healthy? Do the snakes eat? Do they shed in one piece?
Yeah.
It's not like you're cramming, a retic in a 6-quart tub, right? Like, appropriately sized tubs for hatchlings or something, like common sense thing, people. And I think that's the reality too, is just like, look at the health of the animal, because you can neglect cages just as easily as you can neglect racks.
No doubt. Yeah.
Right. So it goes both ways. And like I said, and like you said, I think people are realizing that, the idea of the rack is the best thing, that ideology is gone. A rack is just a tool used by professional breeders to make sure that a large scale of animals are kept to the exact same pinnacle standard of health and cleanliness as somebody with, say, a group of snakes in cages. So just my thoughts, and again, just an opinion. I'm not here to be like, this is a fact. No, opinions aren't facts. I'm just saying from what I've seen.
But your opinion is a fact, Alex.
Yeah. No, I've just got to preface that, because people get too sensitive about it. But I think it's a good change what's happening with it. It's more openly talked about, and at the same time just openly accepted.
That's good.
So.
Cool. Hell yeah. All righty. What's next? What are we hitting?
Okay, I know we just had like a great wrap up to a controversial topic, but I want to hear your thoughts on this first again. What are your thoughts on people constantly using the term ethical and welfare for reptiles these days?
Oh man. I mean, the thing is that there's so many different layers of this onion you can peel back. I think I'm not sure if it's human nature or if it's just the nature of modern humans, but like the impulse to want to feel better than somebody else, to feel morally upstanding. At the end of the day, we're keeping animals in boxes, and we're doing it for ourselves. There's another discussion to be had about does herpticulture truly contribute to conservation?
It doesn't.
Yeah, no, that's
okay. Natural resources degree here. It really doesn't.
Yeah, no, that's kind of my thought as well. I think there's a handful of examples historically of species that have been saved by herpticulture, but are not present in the wild. But will that ever actually matter? Will these areas that have been decimated by development ever be suitable for these animals again if they were to ever be repopulated? So, and is that truly conservation? I don't know. That's another topic altogether. Just giving yourself a way to justify what we do as some noble pursuit, and not that it's not a noble pursuit, but we do this because we enjoy it. At the end of the day, that's why we have these animals. So, in the process, you can maximize the experience of that animal by however many metrics we can measure it by before we get into anthropomorphism. So, I think it's always good to think that way and to at least push the conversation to be thinking about what we can do to be better keepers. But I think that it reaches a logical end sooner than some people would like to think it does, where you start to kind of get into dogma and you get a little bit away from reality. And that's not helpful for anybody or any animals. So I guess we'll bounce this back and forth. I'll let you talk before I ramble too far.
I hate to say it, man. I just feel like it's a marketing term at this point. Both of them. One of my classes I literally took, it was animal ethics. And let me tell you what I keep seeing as far as, and like at least herpeticulture, the idea that it just seems like constantly ethical and ethical breeders are marked as I keep, you know, stuff in live planted, naturalistic, and everybody, like you said, people sort of on this high horse, and yet that's deemed an ethical keeper, and yet you hear stories about that where people will keep an animal that way and then it dies because it was deemed the best way to, and that animal was stressed, right? Versus, say, I don't know, let's say a scrub python, right? You just got a wild, I remember this caring for your collection in Chicago, right? What did you do with a wild scrub python? You maintained it in a rack in a quiet, stress, like stimulus free, to avoid stress on the animal. I want to differentiate those two words. And from the outside, you're like, that's unethical. They should be put into a cage just like the jungle. Well, considering it was just field collected and sent overseas, you do that, it's not going to eat and it's going to die probably. I'd like to imagine, I'm sure you know plenty of other people who have acclimated wild caught scrub pythons, I mean, you yourself, obviously. Yeah. And yet, by today's standards, how you would have acclimated that animal would not have been ethical. It's in a minimalistic setup. There's no welfare there. But right. I would be willing to argue the fact that you're trying to reduce its stress by providing minimal stimulus is actually better for the welfare of that animal. Does that make sense? Kind of. I'm trying not to interchange terms too much.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's kind of the. It's a very similar conversation to, animal rights. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What and kind of the animal rights versus animal welfare kind of discussion, like who is one to define animal rights, and by what set of criteria are you looking at that by? And in the pursuit of said animal rights, oftentimes the dogma will have you do objectively horrible things to those animals in the process of the pursuit of the human goal of animal rights. Would, if they had it their way, it would require massacring millions upon millions of animals that are living in a non-wild setting. Seems kind of cruel to me. But what are our definitions? Animal rights for the animals that are alive now, or for the kind collective of animals forever. It's like, okay, there's areas that outlaw deer hunting, but what's a more ethical way for that deer to go? An older deer that has maybe a year left in it and might not make it through the next winter. A quick snap of the fingers, or a slow, painful death being slowly eaten by other things around it, disease, cold, gets kicked out of the group because it's, like a brutal nature death. Mm-hmm. What's better? What's better objectively? Is that better because that's what nature does, or is it, the human intervention side of it? Is that better? And I think you can apply that same kind of thought process to a lot of these topics that we are putting it upon ourselves to define on behalf of the animals. We're not asking their opinion in anything, not that we can, obviously, but like, for instance, take two snakes side by side, put, say, a ball python and a 4x2x2, two ball pythons, two 4x2x2 side by side. One has a more sterile setup. One has a more, bioactive planted setup, or not even go sterile, like just natural bedding, maybe a plastic hide, a shelf or some branches or whatever it may be. And, inventory these animals in a year. Could you tell a difference?
I believe Zach Lohman did a study on that with his
lab.
And if I'm not, he did it a few years ago. I haven't read it. I heard him talk about it on an episode of Kluber and Kluberwood. And he said the results were fascinating because they had it where the snakes had the option to go minimal, like paper and a hide, and naturalistic. And if I want to say, he said it was 50-50. Just some snakes had preferences. But as
Okay.
far as like the physical health of the animals, I believe like what you were probably going to lead up to is the same.
Oh no, I don't know the answer, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the exact same, because you look at the animal by all of the metrics that we can physically observe. You don't have a fucking clue. If you claim to, you're being dogmatic. That's all that is. You know, I think that I've heard that there's data showing that, I think it's particularly from solid color tub type of setups, that you start to get some mental decline after a while, some cognitive decline, which would make a lot of sense.
Just at that point, it's a lack of stimulus, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And you know, if anybody is out there, if you're listening live or after the fact, and have, you know, better knowledge of these studies than me as to whether they were tubs in general or just non-light penetrating tubs, I'd be kind of interested to know. Yeah, exactly.
Have them comment on the video, like start a
Yeah.
discussion, people. That's what we're trying to do this for. Just offering
Yeah.
opinions and
I mean, and this,
perspectives.
you know, this is a herpetoculture veteran right here. You know, Brian Fisher, saying he's always maintained this is a selfish pursuit, whether we want to admit it or not. And yeah, I mean, it's 100% what it is. You know, like one thing that I always find really kind of, I don't want to say funny, but like ironic, when I see people that are, you know, very passionate about, you know, not buying wild caught animals, not supporting the exportation and the exploitation of these animals. You know, you could even extrapolate this to like not supporting a breeder, like only by getting an animal from a rescue or something like that. Do you think that, let's even say you take your pursuit to the furthest extreme possible and you get importation of reptiles from the wild shut down to this country, do you think that stops it?
Oh no.
It
Now
doesn't
you
do
just made
shit.
the black market demand go up.
Or they're just going to other countries. They would just go to the countries that they're going to now. We don't get the first pick from a lot of countries, especially like in Asia and Africa anymore. It's a whole lot easier for them to send it to India, to the Middle East, to, you know, Korea, Japan, China, these countries that are in high demand of these animals and don't have as much, you know, history of herpetoculture, where there's breeders in those countries that are producing at the level of supplying their own demand there. Newsflash, it's not going to do shit. Your protesting of these wild caught animals is not going to do shit. And also tell it to those collectors who feed their families through this, who it's like, work on palm oil plantation, catch snakes and make 10, 20 times more money. Maybe even more. Like, you know, catch one snake and feed your family for a month. Tell them that they're done. They're not going to listen to you, American. And why should they? You're
They'll
going
probably
to
kill you if you're overseas, honestly.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't go there and tell them to their face that you're not going to do this anymore. So, you know, you got to look at things from the big picture. Yeah, and this is a great point. Yeah, the pet industry is nothing when you compare to habitat destruction, skin trade, et cetera, everything else that is doing this. So, you know, it's like, these conversations aren't bad. We're not like, these are not topics that shouldn't be covered, but you got to look at the situation for what it is. You can't just take the opinion that you'd really love to be what this is and run with it like that. Like, it just, unfortunately, is just not gonna, it's not gonna work. There just isn't a logical conclusion to be drawn from it. And if you want to think about, all right, let's like raise the floor on what we're doing. Let's try to educate and do whatever needs to be done to where like animal neglect is limited as much as we can. Sure, I'll have that conversation with you all day. But like, I mean, for instance, a topic that is kind of part and parcel with this that I think everyone's just kind of missing the point on is like the particularly with snakes, with some other species, it's not, there's more merit to it, but like talking about variety of diet, man, I think people are speaking out of turn on that to a really high degree. And especially when it gets to the conversation of, all right, well, what even is a rat or a mouse to you? What is any food item? Any food item is what it contains, not the vessel. Especially when you come to kind of like the secondary level consumers, like you're not talking about plants. You're talking about something that gains whatever it is by eating things. That rat isn't a rat, nutritionally speaking. It's the components of what it has eaten in its life. So if you think a varied diet is McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, and Chick-fil-A, great variety in your diet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I feed some birds and I feed some this, and I feed some that. It's like that tells me nothing. What are they eating? What's a more varied diet? A mouse or a roach that consumes a varied diet, or 4 different feeder species or however many that consume the same generic lab slop.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is varied diet? Enlighten me.
The foundation is the same. I'd imagine the way the nutrients are obtained. There was a study done a while back. I want to say this was another one that Dr. Lohman mentioned. I believe when we interviewed him with like the indigo snakes. But I mean, that's a generalist species where they were fed mice, rats, chicks versus only fed mice. The varied diet ones grew faster because they're getting a different intake of those nutrients. But at the same time, I see what you mean.
Was volume maintained the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have to do that for a lab. Like,
yeah.
40 grams of mice or 2 20-gram chicks and then a 20. Yeah. But the other thing too, again, is the like you said, that baseline, and that's sort of why I honestly think I've been able to get away with only 3 species of feeder insects.
Yeah.
And I try to do more variety for the hydrosaurs with plants, but that's easy. I just walk outside and I know all of the edible native stuff, and I can get 16 species of plants in their diet from different counties around me. So, one county gets more water, maybe this county's got different soil. That's a true varied diet.
Yeah.
But like, I guarantee you, if I went to the grocery store and I got kale, collard greens, mustard greens, it's all raised on the same mass-produced, fertilizer.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and I say what I say, and I have 5 different types of feeders that I use for my animals. Mice, sophers, rats, button quail, Coturnix quail. So, but they're not all getting them in equal distributions. It's, life stages, and honestly comes down to what I have. My personal experience is, I think with some of the snakes that I work with, I'm not as pleased about their growth and body condition on a bird-based diet. But I think that really just is just about the species that I keep. I don't think that has anything to do necessarily with birds as a feeder item. But one thing that we've definitely talked about before, but I think is always good to emphasize. You were talking about the study that Dr. Lohman was a part of. They maintained the volume where people are like,
sure. Well, I don't know if he had mentioned it. I don't think he did it. He believed it was the OCIC, the Indigo Center that releases them. He's referenced that.
Oh, okay. My bad. No, thanks for correcting me. But anyway, when people in a hobby setting do it, it's okay. Let's say I'm using a weaned rat and a bird that I think looks like it's the same.
Yeah, I think some people forget birds have hollow bones. So a bird the same length of a weaned rat is going to be probably 1/3 the weight. But that's me being a biology nut.
So I think that's another part of the discussion that kind of has a pitfall, is that most people, and not everybody, I'm not saying that there aren't some people that have an approach like this, but most people aren't taking that much of an analytical approach to their feeding of like, all right, I'm actually weighing this out. I'm lucky where, like, because I breed my own rodents, when I'm going through cleaning for the week, I kind of have an idea of what I need to get, keep back for feeding. I weigh every rodent that I euthanize, but just because I don't want to like be after the fact, like, oh my gosh, this one's 5 grams smaller than I wish it was. Like, if it's too small when it's alive, I want to keep it alive until it's big enough to where I want to feed it. So like I'm in a position where I kind of by necessity I do that, and also because I can, like, hey, I want to give this holdback group of scrub pythons softers that are between 45 and 50 grams right now. I have the ability to do that, where if you're not breeding your own rodents, you're kind of at the whim of whatever your rodent company or your rodent supplier decides to send you. You could buy a bag of small rats and get 20 rats that are 39 and 40 grams and be like, okay, that's not what I needed, but thank you. So, I think, like I said, I'm not against all these discussions, but I think that there needs to be a bit of a stronger base to work off of, as far as kind of once you start extrapolating a little bit, because if you're working on kind of a false pretense, it's useless. You're going nowhere. You're going to just kind of circuitously meander and never actually get anywhere with the discussion. So, but then, and then like, I think all of the highly emotionally charged type of language and topics, they don't push anything forward, especially when it comes to discussions on ethics and whatever it may be. Like, those are important discussions, but you need to almost approach ethics from like a scientific standpoint to begin with, which kind of sounds a little backwards. But if you're not acknowledging like some biological truths to begin those discussions, you're really not working on any good information. You're not going to draw a conclusion that might actually improve the lives of these animals that you are trying to do better for. So those are my thoughts.
That's a good way. Dude, that was a great way to wrap that up. I mean, it seems no matter, and obviously, like you said, there are ways to do it, in a happy medium. Well, you said sort of the elitist mentality of, I'm an ethical keeper with pinnacle welfare. Like, there's going to be a dogma with that. It's not even, it's just the further you go into it, the more like eventually something's going to be against those values that are being radicalized and preached. And I'm not saying don't have ethics as a keeper, right?
Right.
But me personally, right, I have I'll say an example, right? Like, I had a clutch of water dragons hatch out that was just really weak, and they started to have some neuro issues, and I personally, I let them pass away. Like, I did personally, as soon as I saw those issues, I tried to offer food, but I did not want to intentionally keep them alive long enough, because those are genetics that I do not want passing on into the captive population. So am I a terrible keeper for letting, that group of like 7 babies that, were sort of wonky to begin with, and in nature would have spiraled around in leaf litter and then picked off by a bird of prey and eaten horrendously? Yeah. Or was I a better keeper by sort of letting them go to sleep and just do their thing, since they didn't live that long, right?
Yeah.
Am I terrible because did they quote unquote suffer by, being weak and falling asleep? Or, should I have just, dispatched them in a terrible way? No, I'm not going to do that. I personally cannot bring myself to do that. But, it's, some people will be like, every animal deserves a chance. Find pet-only homes. Like, do I find 7 pet-only homes that then have to watch those animals just go to sleep because they were born wrong? Or, like, is the responsibility on me, the breeder, who intentionally had good intentions of bringing these animals into the world.
Yeah.
And then realizing these animals are not meant to live. They should pass away in my care. And
Yeah.
I don't want to have, raise those up or try to put effort into raising up animals that would very likely contribute poorly to future captive generations.
Yeah. No, it's one of those kind of tough discussions that I don't think a lot of people are truly up for having. I think you could almost kind of equate it to like, people who have issues with either hunting or, farming for meat production, but will still eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like the ugly process of acquiring it. It's like, okay, well, if you're not willing to do what is necessary to put this food on your table, but you're willing to like complain about it, but are still partaking in the process, like there's a level of hypocrisy there that takes down your argument. But yeah, like that thought of like, okay, I've even had that same kind of thought with, baby scrub pythons I've had that have been born with deformities, where I'm like, okay, this animal is clearly not going to be a breeder, without a doubt. But is it even ethical to keep this animal around? Like, reptiles and snakes in particular do very good at hiding discomfort and hiding ailment. So the snake might be looking okay, but how do we know that it's not in pretty bad pain or whatever it may be? Here's a fantastic point. But all the pesticides that are sprayed for the sake of producing vegan food and whatnot that just destroy native populations. Like, okay, it's unfortunate, and I don't get joy from poking holes in these thought process, but it just is what it is. Like, the same, and obviously we're getting off topic, but it's all kind of related. Like the topic of like electric cars or wind power, the pursuit is this goal of environmental preservation, which most people with at least some form of a conscious care about the environment. But you're exchanging one, you're fixing one issue and creating another one in the process. Like, for instance, whenever I drive by those wind turbines, I cringe. I can't help it. They decimate native bird populations
and bats at night.
Yeah, anything that flies, they destroy them, and they're giant and they're not recyclable. So when those things go out of commission, they go in the ground, or God forbid, the ocean or something like that, for the sake of changing a fuel source. Or like what Marcus was just saying about the pesticides. Okay, and I give people credit who want to eat vegan diets because they don't want to support factory farming or all that stuff. Like, it's a noble pursuit, one that I'm not willing to take. But then you got to look at the other side of it. What goes into producing all this plant-based food? How is it done? Just absolutely destroys native ecosystems. So what do you value more? And that's where there's like the no good answer to a lot of this stuff, unfortunately. Yeah, exactly. Just with the electric cars, it's just a transfer of pollution. And what are you polluting? Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff, there's not going to be a solution that makes everybody happy. It's like it's just not going to happen. And I think the same kind of logic can be applied to a lot of these conversations about ethics with our animals.
Culture.
Yeah.
No matter what we do in the hobby, nobody's going to be happy.
No action is going to be without an equal and opposite reaction in any direction. Let's even say, let's extrapolate. Let's say that we all of a sudden have these crazy kind of restrictions on enclosures or whatever it may be, like how some European countries have, and larger scale production just isn't really possible anymore. We still have this huge hobby. What if we get to the point to where, let's just say in this hypothetical, captive production of reptiles just can't support the market, and now we got to rely on wild caughts again?
Yeah. You're going full circle back to the 70s.
Yeah. So, you know, the trade-offs are never gonna go away, and it comes right back to what we were talking about earlier and what Brian said. Like this, what we're doing here is a selfish pursuit. There's no two ways to look at it. Even if you're somebody who, you know, your whole collection consists of rescues, however you may want to, you know, look at it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're another nerd like us that just
you're doing the same thing.
Admire animals in a box.
You're just going about it in a way that makes you feel better about it, which is not a bad thing. Like, I'm not here to tell you, like, I'm not here to put somebody down who is trying to make themselves feel better, but it's the same thing ultimately, just with another, with a layer upon it that makes you okay with what you're doing. My layer of making what I feel okay with it is I know how much I care about the animals, and I know that I'm always gonna be doing something to try to make that existence for them better, and trying to educate others as well, like using this platform right here. You know, it's always on my mind, and I've continued to kind of work my numbers of my collection to the point where I feel like I'm able to give better individualized attention to animals, and, you know, be able to not have to rush where I can catch if something starts to become wrong or whatever it may be. I mean, I guess, for instance, like I'm very fortunate about this. I haven't been in a scenario where I found it necessary to take an animal to the vet in a long time. Not that nothing has gone wrong, but that like things have gone wrong to the point where it's like, okay, nothing is gonna stop what's happening here. Like I've talked about in the past, I bought a collection of snakes that ended up all having cancer. Like that's not something that you can mitigate. You just got to keep those animals comfortable. But if I'm not having respiratory infections and skin problems and animals that are going off of food for no reason, you know, sheds that are good, these are the tangible pieces of evidence that we have. That, and another one, the snakes are calm.
I don't know, man. I read some old books. Grub pythons are like heat-seeking missiles, and they're gonna nail you.
Like, but even, you know,
I think you're neglecting them. They should not be that calm.
Exactly.
Man probably keeps them ambient heat, so they're actually calm and sick and ill, and you got to give them a 95-degree hot spot.
But like, you know, one thing that I've been kind of witnessing recently that has kind of almost made me step back and kind of realize this even more. I have a new male Spilotes sulphureus that is here at the collection now. He's an adult male. He was wild caught, I think, like a year ago, but still. And I put him in a cage that's like in my living room with the female, and I'm, you know, in real time watching this animal get adjusted to this. And I look around at everything else and I'm like, these animals are just so perfectly acclimated to what this is. Like aside from that snake, I don't think there's one snake in this house that I can walk up to its enclosure and it's going to have like a startled reaction to me being there. Maybe a couple rattlesnakes, because that's very much what they do. If I were to shock a rattlesnake, all of a sudden they're like, oh gosh.
Organism that relies on heat to see just gets flooded with infrared.
I'm not peekabooing my snakes, but like these animals are very accustomed to their environment where they're comfortable. They're accustomed to my presence, to where that's not seen as a threat. I mean, I could go an entire cycle of taking care of all of my animals and not have one strike thrown at me. It's not because I'm some snake whisperer. It's just that they're in a suitable, low stress, healthy environment where they've become comfortable and are not threatened by their immediate surroundings. I'd much rather have that than a snake that's in some dense, natural, planted enclosure that is just
freaking out and
scared all the time. I mean, just think about, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion in the past couple of years about neurotransmitters with humans. These animals all experience the same types of things. Imagine like the damage that those like cortisol spikes would do to these little reptilian bodies. I hope that reptiles have cortisol. I think they do, but that'd be really, I feel real dumb if they didn't. Your silence is really not making me feel comfortable. But
I genuinely don't know. I'd like to imagine. I mean, it's a vertebrate, but
yeah.
Similar.
I sound stupid.
I believe they do, because I had there was actually at my old job, I had somebody message me. They offered a cortisol feces test, so you could actually test to see if your animals are I forget the specific, but like you can test feces for levels of the presence of like cortisol. It's in a sense like if they're stressed, they'll pass like a chemical cue in their feces, and then you could test to see how stressed they are.
Interesting. Well, there you go. But even without putting a label of what it biologically is doing to them, that level of stress is going to suppress the immune system. It's going to potentially cause a number of issues. So I think that, if you look at these metrics that we can truly quantitatively measure at this point and measure the well-being of the snake or the lizard or the whatever based on these criteria, I think going too far past that is getting into anthropomorphism. Like if the animal is in good body condition, weight, skin, etc., activity level, appropriate activity level, clear eyes, shedding well, eating properly. I mean, obviously the next discussion about if these animals are being reproductive, because some people argue that's like the ultimate testimony of the animal's health. Some people argue that it means nothing at all. I'm a little more in the middle towards the first one, but I don't think that's an ultimate of health in an animal.
It depends on the species. I mean, trust me, from certain college experiences that were obviously reptile related, but stuff can breed in a closet, and it's not saying stuff breeds in a closet and you can keep it in a closet. So,
but then if you took it to if you extrapolated that to the extreme, then my God, why haven't people put Boelen's pythons in CB70s yet?
I thought there was somebody who already did that
successfully.
No.
Okay. Say, wait, that'd be fucking wild. But I mean, there's a level of like critical thinking that can take you pretty far in these types of inquiries into well-being of animals. So I don't know. We can. You know what? Yeah, Lisa does make a great point. Stress can induce reproduction. That's absolutely the case. I had my best scrub python breeding year to date right after moving across the country. So it definitely, it's definitely not the be all end all metric of well-being of an animal. That's absolutely the case. But you kind of use this aggregate of what we can measure. And if the ability to measure beyond in the future comes about, then fantastic. So I don't know. I think that it's a touchy subject that ultimately it's a very emotional subject for a lot of us keepers. And, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that we really care about these animals a lot, or, at least we should a lot, and almost everybody really does. So you want to provide the best you can for those animals, but you also want to feel like you are providing the best for your own sake. So, I think a lot of, I think, we've both kind of echoed this. A lot of these kind of talking points around this issue are more for us than for the animals. But if you can take as much of it as possible and have it benefit the animals, then great. But a lot of this grandstanding is really, it's for the human. It's not for the animal.
Well said, brother. Well said. Yeah, I got nothing. I mean, yeah, it's we're on the same page there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and exactly.
Just a weighted word to throw. I guess that's the way I've seen it. It just seems like nobody takes it seriously anymore. It just seems like marketing. Yeah. If you're an ethical breeder, you're suddenly better than everybody else.
And what's unfortunate about, like, Lisa saying that, which is 100% the case, is that you just take the meaning away from the word. Mm-hmm. It's a very important topic.
It is.
But if you,
it doesn't seem like it's serious anymore.
You strip the importance and the seriousness away from it, then you completely get away from what should be the goal in the first place, is to improve ethics of keeping. It kind of backfires if you think about that. So we keep the conversation serious and keep the emotional grandstanding out of it, you might actually get somewhere. But if your own ego is at the forefront, then you're going to dilute the word. And then ultimately the conversation is going to end up being a personal shouting match and have nothing to do with the animals. But when it ends up that way, it had nothing to do with the animals in the first place. So.
Dang, dude.
I feel like we should end on a happier note.
Dang. Bro, I'm too tired for that.
I know. I'm sorry. I've kept you.
I'm like, oh man, my brain is just fried. Yeah. I knew we were gonna get into this, but I'm like, dang. Like when you really peel back the layers of the onion, you do start to cry.
And then this is a good point that Brian makes as well, is that it's also a constantly and never-ending moving goalpost, which it 100% is. Which I think, if you look at it in a charitable way, it would be that way as we get further advanced in science, and just as keepers keep advancing, that's never going to end. But at the same time, like, the criteria that are deemed acceptable, the people who are like the dogmatic ethical keepers, they don't want you to also be on what they believe is their level. They want to be above you.
Yeah.
So it's for that. It's a selfish pursuit on their part to feel better than someone else. So as soon as you might start to test that, like, hey, look what I'm doing, you got to divert, you got to change course, you got to, it's because it was never about the animals to begin with. Right. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, shoot, I think I've always thought about this as like a concept for a podcast of like kind of doing like, I don't know, not like a healthy debate, not like a full blown like Piers Morgan type of shit, but like, some like people who are on really opposite sides of an issue. Like CCR did something like that a couple months ago, which it was a good podcast about some kind of like somewhat taboo topics within the industry, but most of the people who were on the show had a variation of the same view on it, which, I mean, frankly, was the right answer to the question. But I think that, I don't know, it could go one of two ways to have very dissenting views. Could actually be a really riveting conversation, or it could just be total mayhem, and it more than likely would be more of the second. But
just live stream them talking about it, but it's a boxing match.
Anyway, so, well, yeah, man,
maybe not. We don't.
Maybe not an actual boxing, theoretical boxing match. Shoot, 2 years, man. 2 years of the show.
2 years of Kush's Corner.
Who would have thought? You have to have been on for double-digit episodes by now, right?
Maybe. I have a whole playlist on the Alek Najarian channel now just dedicated specifically to co-host episodes. Cool. So there's like all of the podcasts I've been on, but then there is the Kush's Corners podcast. So it's probably somewhere up there. I don't know.
Cool.
Been some good ones. 2 for 2. This was a great one. I told you I thought I was going to be able to talk for like 90 minutes, and we're coming up on 2.5 hours, man. So this was good. Yeah. I didn't think we'd go as deep into this. I wrote these questions up on a whim, and holy crap! Hopefully the
it works.
People listening got some insight. I definitely, hearing your perspective on some of that, that's given me stuff to think about. And
yeah,
once again, I'll encourage it again. People rewatching this on YouTube, or if you're listening. Take some notes on your thoughts and then comment on the actual YouTube video. Get a discussion going in the comments. Yes, it can be a little tense. Yes, this stuff is hard to talk about. But if we, just put your ego aside. I want to hear from everybody. If you are and we're not trying to call people out, but if you're, keeping a, like I said, I've got my corn snakes in display setups. I don't think I'm better than somebody breeding them in, V35 tubs, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about it. Why do I'll happily start something maybe why I love keeping my animals in a display cage, where I think my ethics stand by doing that, providing stimulus with the light cycles that I mentioned earlier. I think that's great. At the same time, if you keep yours in tubs, maybe you have a light on in your room that changes, or the fact that you're breeding. Am I terrible because I've got a corn snake that's pacing right now, and for 20 years he has never been able to copulate? Am I depriving him of that behavior? See what I'm not trying to pick fights here, but if we don't break down these things and hear different perspectives on it, then, like I said, we're no better than the extremists on both sides. And so, honestly, Stephen, thank you for
we could definitely keep diving deeper. I'm gonna hold myself back from saying more, but I know I know you got to get up for work early, but dude, thank you so much for being a part of this so far, and I'm excited for many more episodes to come. Thank you for being here tonight. This ended up being an awesome conversation. So where can people find you? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I guess, now might be a good time to start talking about it. For anybody who's going to be a Tinley, man, I'm going to be there. First Tinley Park in 3 years. So I am excited. You will probably see me with Alex for quite a bit of the show, just hanging out, walking around. If anyone's there, come say hi, come talk about whatever, always love hanging out at the reptile shows, doing these, interacting with the chats. It's all great. Social media is great. Nothing like actually being there in person and talking about what we love face to face. So, but yeah, man, where can people follow you, keep up with what you're doing, inquire about animals, all that good stuff?
Just, you look up Alex Myers or Alek Najarian, Facebook, Instagram, MORPHMARKET, Fauna, YouTube. I'm on all of it. And then you can find my email. You can shoot me a message on there. As I mentioned at the start, I have had a career change. So typically I try to respond to everything by the end of the day or early in the morning when I get up and I start my animal work. So one way or another, if you want captive bred Chinese water dragons or captive bred Philippine sailfins, let me know. And like I said, specifically for this episode, say you heard from me on Trap Talk, I'll do a little discount on Chinese water dragons with the for the Trap Talk Reptile Network special. So
all right,
thanks again for having me on, Stephen. This was fun, and here's to many more years at Kush's Corner.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Alex, and thank you to everybody who was tuned in live, listening after the fact, watching, listening. Thank you all very much. Thank you for being here for these first 2 years of this journey. I owe you all a large debt of gratitude, and hopefully I can repay that by having many more amazing podcasts for the years to come. So thank you all very much for being here with us this evening. I'll catch you all back here next week for a new episode.